know what it is. It's another week of the smoke-filled room because we're in the heat of the political election season. There is no way we're going to cover everything that's happened in the last week. But if we're going to do it, we're going to do it with the expert guest that we have with us this week. We've got State Senator Terri Bryant. She's from the 58th District. She's the Assistant Republican Leader. She previously was a state representative. She also worked at the Illinois Department of Corrections, which is going to come up very soon. Terri, we're glad to have you.
Thanks. It's really good to be with you today. I'm actually in Chicago today. I went to the chamber luncheon, so I'm tucked away in a little conference room, hoping no one walks in behind me.
Nice. I love it. That's awesome. We always say you're one of the hardest workers in politics, and there you go. You just prove it right there.
Thank you.
We also have State Representative Dan Caulkins from the 88th District. He's got a long history of service, whether it's in Decatur as a council member, whether it's serving in the Army. He's a longtime businessman, and he is in his final term as state representative. Dan, glad to have you.
Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be back. And I was very pleased to note that our previous guest is not with us today, so maybe more people can talk.
When you say our previous guest, what do you mean?
I don't want to mention any names, Aaron Delmar.
I just figured I'd put it up on a tee for you. We had fun teasing Aaron from that last episode we were together on.
Had a great time.
I will say, when you say our previous guest, we did, in all honesty, for our viewers, we wanted Joe for this episode, not Dan. But you know what, Joe, we have some issues on this podcast that Dan's got some intimate knowledge on. So Joe decided to let Dan carry the torch. But let's just be clear that we wanted the more, professional and talented one of the two of you, but she just wasn't available.
Popular as well.
There you go. Exactly. We also have with us a good friend of mine, TJ Brown. He's the Republican committeeman for Northfield Township. He's a veteran of politics, also a consultant and a campaign staffer going back to the 90s, and has spent his career in business. TJ, good to have you.
Good to be here. I shouldn't, my career actually right out of college for the first 5 years, I was a journalist. I don't know if I should say that too loudly. I mean, might as well just say I was a gigolo or something else, but no, it's a pleasure to be here. I watched just about or listened to just about every one of these shows. And as far as Aaron, he did that you're referring to the show in Springfield. He did finish in time that we could still order from the order food from the bar just before it closed down. So I was happy.
That's all that mattered, right? Don't get in the way of my drinks and my food. Also with us, our course political experts. We've got Chris, we've got Michael. They're ready to bring the heat this week, so I'm excited to see what they got. What's up, guys?
Let's get after it. It's going to be a good episode. I think. We'll see if we can make it into Catbacks again.
There you go. We got Michael, who's more and more of a celebrity every week. We got Chris, who you never know if he's going to be happy or sad, but I think with the White Sox performance, Chris is going to be grumpy Chris this week. What do you think?
We've been winning games, Collin. This is a problem. We are somehow not going to beat the records this whole season. Will be for naught. We just lost this many games for no reason. That's what's going to happen.
The one thing that could have redeemed our season, where we could have set a record, and we can't even do that right. Yeah, welcome to the White Sox. All right, let's get right into our topics. So when we were down, actually, it's funny. You guys mentioned TJ and Dan being down in Springfield and down for some of our in-person SFRs at the state fair and at the state convention. Terri Bryant's been telling us we should be paying attention to the Department of Corrections. And I got to be honest, since she said that, we have been. And I have dozens of archive stories saved here that I've wanted to talk about on one of these episodes, but I felt weird talking about it with somebody other than Terri. So thank God Terri was able to make some time for us in her busy schedule to be with us this week. And that's really where I want to start. I want to shut up. I want to pass it to you, Senator Bryant. What the heck is going on at the Department of Corrections, and why is it getting buried? Why aren't more people talking about this?
Well, I think more people are not talking about it because anything in the Department of Corrections kind of scares them a little bit. But maybe they feel like they don't have enough knowledge about it, or sometimes there's a little bit of spin that comes out of there. This time, there's a whole lot of spin coming out of the Department of Corrections. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. I'll zip through this pretty quickly, and then maybe we'll have some questions about it. But I started out close to 5 years ago asking that the Department of Corrections begin doing an electronic scan of their mail. We knew that at that time there were a couple other states that are doing it. So basically you would take the real piece of mail, scan that in electronically so that the offender would be able to read their mail straight off. In some cases, it's just like taking a screenshot of the envelope and a screenshot of the mail. And then that mail never touches the hands of the offender, does not have to go through the facility. It's a very simple process. Department of Corrections threw up all kinds of barriers, said they weren't going to do it. And I started that because we were hearing lots of rumors about drugs and contraband going into the facilities. I was listening, but I had no proof. About 2 years ago, it started to ramp up. About 6 months ago, it started ramping up exponentially. So in June, I asked my staff, one of my staff members is a retired shift commander, so a major from Menard, had duty warden responsibilities. He will forget more about corrections than I'll ever know. And I know more than any of the other legislators, I can tell you that. So I asked John to really start taking a look at these and start collecting from staff documents that we could get, because staff isn't allowed to talk to the media. They're not allowed to give us documents. So they actually had to sneak us some documents, and I have to be very careful to keep them anonymous in all of this. But so far, since June, I have been able to gather 58 different what are called reportables. So that's an actual document that goes from the institution to the various deputy directors and then ultimately on to the director. Of those 58 individual reports, there are even more actual incidents, because some of them have more than one incident in them, from 17 different facilities. And those are only the ones where we know people, so we can get them. I would argue that every medium and maximum security facility in the state will have some of these incidences, and they include, I jotted a few of them down. So it just as far as drugs go since June, 22 instances of drugs at Menard, 21 at Pinckneyville, 2 at Lawrence. I'm zipped down to Stateville, like 11 incidences at Stateville, and then additional ones at Stateville, RNC, plus Pontiac, Lawrence, Hill, Graham, and so forth. What's happening is, which kind of started this push that I've made over the last 3 weeks, is on a particular Monday at Menard Correctional Center, they had 5 staff that went out with exposures to drugs. Of that 5, 3 were staff, 1 was an offender, and 1 was an EMS responder who came in the ambulance. They all went to Chester Hospital. They all showed indications of high blood pressure, headaches. We're now starting to hear that there are incidences of blood oxygen levels of 80 and below, which, if you know anything about medicine, my dad died of lung cancer at 92, at the level of 92, he was suffocating. So it's super important. We're now starting to hear that there are some folks who are having trouble with kidneys. One lady I'm going to meet with tomorrow is getting ready to go to the Mayo Clinic because she's having some trouble with her liver. Whether those were there previously and they've just now been exacerbated, we don't know yet. But the department has been saying that this hasn't been going on. And I've met with them repeatedly. They keep saying that. It's hard to argue against the documents. It's hard to argue against the fact that in most of these facilities, sometimes 2 people a day are going out by ambulance. And now I have some reportables that show inmate deaths. I have 5 of those reportables. 2 of them are clearly from fentanyl, and we'll make those available to the media in the coming weeks. Finally, yesterday, the governor's office did give me a call. I appreciated that. We had a great conversation. I gave them all of this information, and I told them they have till Wednesday to respond to me. If they don't respond to me, then I'm gonna start FOIAing these things so that I can have them in a way that allows me to not get staff in trouble for having them.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, I mean, it seems like for months this has been getting swept under the rug, and even some political blogs have almost been, I'll just be frank, have almost been making fun of you a little bit.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is no big deal, this isn't happening, when clearly it was. And I mean, I guess they say first they make fun of you and then they pay attention, but like you've been screaming about this, and I don't know if it's just been they've been trying to cover it up because, you know, they don't want the governor to look bad, but at a certain point you think they got to actually finally pay attention.
Well, let me just mention something that happened just recently to show you, when I'm hesitant to use the word cover up, but I've been starting to use it. Yeah. So I went to Menard, asked to get in. I went because they had a chief. So levels are the director, then chiefs, then deputy directors, then wardens. So this chief was coming down to look at the possibility of carbon monoxide. So they're going to try to make it look like it's carbon monoxide, which is ridiculous because there isn't even the possibility of carbon monoxide at Menard or Pinckneyville. They were saying the same thing at Pinckneyville. So I showed up there. I was being a little bit facetious, and I said, hey, I'm here to see if you're going to start evacuating the facility. Do I need to get the mayor of Chester down here to see if we're going to do evacuations? Of course it wasn't carbon monoxide. And the chief told me that. They did not let me in. As a sitting senator, they were on level 1 lockdown. Okay, I understand that, but I'm also a retiree. Had my retiree ID. I offered to put on PPE. I offered to put on hazmat gear, which I was certified for in corrections. Wouldn't let me do that. They told me I had to make an appointment. So that was Labor Day weekend. Come Tuesday, I sent them a request, and I thought, you know what? Now you want to make this a thing, I'm going to make it a thing. So I asked to get into Menard, MSU, Pinckneyville, Big Muddy, Murfreesboro, DuQuoin. Now I'm going to go to Western. I'm going to go to Lawrence. I'm going to go to Hill. I'm going to go to Graham. I'm going to go to Pontiac. I'm going to go to all of them, because at every one of these facilities, it's happening. And while I was at Big Muddy just 2 days ago, an exposure happened while I was there in the house I had just been in 30 minutes before. When I left the house that I was in at Pinckneyville, my eyes were so bloodshot when I left that I actually had to go outside the facility to get my eyes cleared up from just being in that particular cell house. It is a massive cover up. And one more thing, Collin. So I asked, one major procedural thing that they do when they send in the regional TAC team, which is to do shakedowns in those particular cell houses where they find these things, you're supposed to shut the water off. That water is supposed to be shut off so they can only flush one time. The chief of operations ordered that the water not be shut off. All 3 days that they were shaking down at Menard, the entire day that they were at Pinckneyville, and the entire day that they were at Big Muddy. And when I asked the chief about it, when I asked Chief Hammers about it, he said, oh, we wanted to protect the staff, so we thought it was better if they flushed it than if we found it.
No.
I said, seriously? You're being accused of a cover-up and you're letting them flush the stuff? I mean, so now I want the EPA involved. I asked them if OSHA had been notified, because even though OSHA doesn't have like purview over corrections the same way they do a private company, they do have to give them a report when there's been an exposure. Not one report to OSHA. So the day after I was at Menard, OSHA showed up at Menard. Now, again, remember, this isn't just Menard, Pinckneyville. It's not just the 58th Senate District. It is at Stateville, Pontiac, Illinois River. Dixon has had deaths, and it's not just staff. Those deaths were offender deaths. I want to know where the inmate advocacy groups are. I've talked to AFSCME. I've talked to laborers. I've talked to John Howard. We have someone who's sending some stuff to the ACLU. Everybody needs to be on this. Today, the guy I talked to today, who like me he started in the 80s. I started in the 90s. This is the worst that anyone has seen since just before the Richard Speck tapes.
And the thing for me is, okay, I can say it. I mean, the fact that the governor's office reached out to you, maybe you want to be a little nice to them for a couple of days, because maybe they might finally start taking this seriously. But for me, all I can go back to is, if it was a Republican governor, this would be on the front page of the news. These deaths, these problems.
Yeah, there'd be picket lines up at every institution. I mean, the staff is begging for help. And to be very honest with you, so are the offenders. I had one sergeant who told me that an offender said to him, Sarge, please get me out of this cell house. This is going on all the time. I don't want to be around this. Well, if the sergeant then moves that offender to another house, then he has to say why he's moving them. And he's actually putting that offender in danger, because then, then they're part of it.
He doesn't want to put it on paper and admit the facts?
Well, the offender doesn't want it on paper, because then they're a snitch. So it's complicated for everyone who's in the facilities. And right now, I've been begging for other legislators to get involved. Tomorrow I'm going to do a Zoom meeting with the other senators. I think Leader McCombie's going to set up something for the House. I'm going to have my guy John on there as well, so that John can start explaining to everyone exactly what's going on, and when you're walking through the facilities, what to look for. But I'm willing to go with every legislator who wants to go into the facility and tell them what's real and where they're getting spun.
One of the things we always tell people in politics is KYA, know your audience. Do these people not know you, Terri? If they just putting up a block or a wall in front of you is just going to make you go 10 times faster into that wall. Do they not know you at all?
I see Michael actually laughing, because when they wouldn't let me in on that Friday when I was at Menard, I was talking to the chief and I said, you know what? This didn't have to be a thing. I could have gone in, I would have explained to everybody what was going on, but now you made it a thing, so now I'm going to make it a thing. And that's it. Now I'm not going to be nice about it anymore. And there's no possible way, even if I were trying to exaggerate, I could not exaggerate how bad this is. It is so bad. And when I have the documents to show inmate deaths. I think the only thing we're lacking right now is a Chicago mom crying on TV legitimately because her child who's locked up has died, right? Maybe no one cares about what staff works there, but I guarantee you they care about the offenders that are there with this particular administration. So,
but that's kind of my thing. That was one of my last questions to you isn't that the focus right now? Isn't it on improving the lives of those who have offended? I mean, isn't this the big push by the Democratic Party in Illinois? And yet here we go, our documented cases where these very people, these justice impacted individuals, they're dying on Pritzker's watch, on the Democrats' watch, and they don't seem to care.
And I would say this too, so I had a legislator who called me, and I would say innocently ignorant, and asked me, did I think that this was just the staff exercising blue flu because they're mad about Stateville closing? And I would say to them, no, because it's offenders and staff alike, number one. And two, we're seeing fentanyl, opioids, and we're seeing K2. So what happens with K2 is, and I believe it's what happened at Graham, when they had those 6 individuals that went out and then they tried to say it was talcum powder. So what happens with K2 is you are able to figure out chemically what's in it. So you create a test for it. You test until the chemists that are making it realize that they need to make a change. So they just change one element and now the tests don't work anymore. So we'll come back inconclusive. What I saw at Menard in that first day when I really got engaged was those 5 people that went to the hospital. When they got there, the hospital told them, because one of them asked for toxicology, the hospital told them that the department said only the inmates can get the toxicology, not the staff. So after I had a high-speed come apart, by the time it happened again on Wednesday, everyone was getting their toxicology done. But they're still denying service-connected time off. They're supposed to get 5 days off for this. But when this toxicology comes back indeterminate, they're not allowing them the time off, but they still have elevated blood pressure, massive headaches, kidney issues. One guy right now is urinating blood, and there's no explanation for it. So this is very, very serious. And I believe that every legislator, whether you're Democrat or Republican, should get engaged, but the general population has to cry out about what is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is right up your alley, obviously. So I've been talking with you mostly. If any of the other 4 of you have thoughts, feel free to jump in. Otherwise, we'll jump to the next topic. I'm not sure there's much any of us can really add to what Terri has shared, but I don't want to cut anybody off if you've got thoughts.
Well, I would just say, I mean, obviously Terry's doing a great job on staying on top of this and really pushing for solutions and trying to get this addressed. And, I've got a lot of friends that I went to high school with that work at Muddy at the prison there. And they've been telling me, similar stories of what they're dealing with. And there was even, they're mailing these, mailing contraband, mailing in, sheets of paper that are, soaked in drugs. So these inmates can, take those and smoke them in their cells. And they're using the names and addresses of innocent people and using, somebody else's name to mail this in so it can't be traced to the individual that actually, sent this package of contraband materials. And Terri and I even have a mutual friend that his name was used on one of the packages. And the sheriff's department contacted him and they were like, what's going on? Do you know anything about this? He's like, no, that's not me. I didn't send that. I don't know. The recipient of that package, never talked to them or had any contact with them previously. So, you just have regular, average, everyday people that their names are being implicated in some of these things because of what some bad actors are doing. So it's just terrible. And I'm proud of Terri and all she's done for us.
Thank you. There
Well,
was,
to the people watching around the state, this is something you guys should be reaching out to Senator Terri Bryant. If you're a candidate, if you're a public leader, reach out to Senator Bryant. She's the leader on this, and sounds like she'll absolutely get you involved. And the more people we have talking about this, the more people we have digging into this. And we got to hold the Pritzker administration accountable. It sounds like maybe finally they might start doing something about this, but it's not nearly enough and not nearly fast enough. And we got to raise the heat.
and I will add into what Michael is saying is exactly right. It's coming in primarily in legal mail, and sometimes they'll even have the attorney's name at the top. So the department now is trying to have like a two-part verification so they can check to see if it's coming in. But 2 years ago, when my guy John was still working at Menard, there was a box of paper that came in, brand new box of paper that had been soaked in a drug. $900,000 worth of product. So imagine that a piece of paper the size of half of your little fingernail is worth $80 inside the facility. Then you know the dollar amount that we're dealing with and how big this is. And so it's big money. And I would say that there are lots of folks that are involved in it. I've been told by some friends, don't be traveling around alone these days, because talking about it openly, and there's a lot of people who are going to be affected by the amount of money that this is going to stall.
Wow. Well, I know that's never going to stop you from doing the right thing, which is why we love you. All right, let's keep moving along in our agenda. We're going to talk about some political stuff, some campaign developments that have been happening over the last week. First is IL 17, by many considered the top congressional district that Republicans could win, that could flip in November. This is Joe McGraw, the Republican candidate, against Eric Sorensen. We've talked about it a few times in recent weeks, and the latest developments are that Joe McGraw is up with his first TV ad in the last week, and the NRCC is airing their own ad, which is a pretty stellar attack ad on Sorensen in the 17th. I've also been able to find that AFB Action, AFP's C4, is doing a number of digital ad buys throughout the district. So ads are starting to fly in the 17th congressional district, in what's going to be a pretty targeted race. And I think it's interesting that the NRCC is playing this early. I think in previous cycles, we haven't seen the NRCC come in as early as September. Usually it's like the last week of October that they finally wake up and start sending a few bucks to Illinois, which means they're clearly taking this district seriously. They're clearly serious about picking up the 17th, which I think is awesome to see. So I'll open it up. Anybody have thoughts on the 17th? Anybody hearing anything you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, you see, obviously you referenced, Judge Joe McGraw, his campaign has got an ad running. NRCC is running an attack ad in that district. I know that Sorensen has got a positive ad up about coming from his campaign. That one has kind of been panned by a lot of people for being pretty awkward. And there's one moment where it almost looks like he's kind of like floating, and for some reason he hands his umbrella to a police officer. Like, that's normal. I mean, it's just strange. But another thing that I thought was pretty interesting is following that second assassination attempt, over the weekend on President Trump, the Trump campaign put out a list of quotes from high-profile Democrats across the country, and some of the rhetoric that they've used towards him. Obviously the Trump campaign is trying to make an argument that some of these assassination attempts have been influenced by some of the rhetoric that the Democrats have been using, saying things, like he's a threat to democracy and things of that nature. But what I thought was very interesting is that they had a quote from Eric Sorensen included on that list. So people at very high levels, of the National Republican Party are paying attention to this race. They're getting that oppo on Sorensen out there, which is a good sign. And it's really nice to be noticed for once in this state, because like Collin alluded to, sometimes on these congressional races in Illinois, they kind of sit on their hands for a long time and then get involved at the last minute. So it's good to see some early action here.
Yeah, that NRCC ad was hard hitting. I mean, that was a well done ad that's certainly going to move some numbers.
Well, I think Sorensen is a pretty abrasive. He's similar to Sean Casten, for the people who don't really follow congressional figures outside of the Chicago area. He's pretty outspoken,
unlikable,
and unlikable, and I don't know enough about that race that Esther Joy King ran. I thought she was a good candidate, but I do know that Judge McGraw is everywhere. He was raising money in Lake County a couple months ago. Steve Scalise met him at Chevy Chase Country Club in Wheeling, and then he's going to be back up. Kathy Salvy's hosting a fundraiser for him and a couple other congressmen or congressional candidates this weekend. So around here, I've noticed the vitriol for Trump outside of the strong partisans has ebbed a little bit. And this is all anecdotal. I don't have data that Collin might be looking at, but I believe that the vitriol to the point where it's transferred over to other people, where I had conversations with people a couple of years ago saying, Donald Trump's not going to wake up and be briefed in the White House that Dan Patlak is no longer on the board of review and it's going to do anything to change Donald Trump's mood or his actions. But you'll lose somebody on the board of review who's working pretty hard to keep your property taxes assessed fairly. So I do wonder when you go further west into areas like Dixon and Freeport and the Quad Cities, if Sorensen's shtick, his anti-Trump shtick, is going to play as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a hugely anti-Trump district. Obviously doesn't do us favors in most areas of Illinois, but that district specifically is working class, it's blue collar, it's not hugely anti-Trump. And Sorensen is way too far left for that district. That's what that NRCC ad is hammering home, is those far left progressive things that Sorensen likes to push. Maybe that works in your region, TJ, but it certainly as heck doesn't work out towards Rockford. It doesn't work, out towards the western edge of the state. That's just not where that works. And Sorensen does not fit that district. And a lot of my Democrat friends from out in that area, they know it. They say, they don't like Sorensen at all. They just don't want to lose to Republicans because, of course, nobody likes to lose. But half of them says we wouldn't mind if he lost, and the other half says, well, we don't want to lose to a Republican. But they get it. They know that Sorensen is really not, their rock star candidate for sure.
Well, and we saw polling, during the summer before Joe Biden had dropped out that, this was a competitive race between McGraw and Sorensen, and also that, Trump was beating Biden in that congressional district, which was a big improvement from how Trump performed in that district in 2020. I mean, we'll see how much Kamala's candidacy makes a difference in that district. Obviously, she's going to kind of cut into that margin over Biden that Trump had, but we'll see how much she's able to move the needle.
I was going to add too that I think finally the NRCC woke up to the change in Illinois in that we don't have one election day anymore. We have 40 election days. And then that last day is our last day to cast a vote. So what we used to do traditionally for 30 days before an election, we now have to do 70 days before. So that's one thing. And then the other was, I noticed at the convention, really a lot of minority delegates, and some of the minority delegates that were there told us to sit back and watch. They were speaking, being from the south side of Chicago, saying, you all are going to be surprised. The south side of Chicago is going to go for Trump in this election. So I think the NRCC actually is starting to listen to a little bit of those minority communities where maybe it won't be in the suburbs, but it's possible that we could see a real shift in Chicago. I'm hoping that as Republicans, we don't let this be a one-off, that we actually embrace some of the things that we may have to embrace so that we can have those really good voices in that diversity in our party. And so we can continue to move down this path, and it's not just a one-off.
Yeah.
Well, Senator Bryant, it's interesting you talk about the movement in the city among particularly African Americans and even Latinos. I know someone I worked with at Pioneer Press 25 years ago. His name's Irv Levitt. He covered suburban towns for years. He's had some bad health, unfortunately. He's in a Warren Barr rehabilitation center. He's been in there for months because he's had a number of different ailments, sadly. But he occasionally writes his Substack, and I saw he's a lefty. He's an unabashed left winger, and he's retired now, so he says what he thinks. But he wrote a Substack this week. He's been in this rehab center, and most of his nurses are African-American women, and he's been polling them. And he says out of like 15 of them, or whatever his number was, only 3 said they're for sure voting for Kamala Harris, and that they are very frustrated with what has been going on at the city level and the state level. And they look at Trump as at least recognizing that there are a lot of needs that are being unanswered, being neglected. And he said something like he's kind of wondering if the numbers in the city are going to shift a little bit. And he talked to Elizabeth Austin, who's a consultant, a Democratic consultant, and she said the same thing. The numbers of the wards during the primaries, there were no contests on the Republican side in the primaries. And some of the wards on the South Side had an increase of like 3 or 4-fold Republican ballots requested. It's strange, because what are you voting for? You're not, you got a state's attorney's race on the Democratic side. You know, you have a number of races that are blank on our side in some of these areas on the west side and the south side, but they saw increases. And we've seen the caliber of some of the committeemen that have taken over in some of these wards that were largely vacant, or, you know, you had people who came in that you wondered where they came from. They certainly didn't look like people from that ward. So I think there's definitely a change in the caliber. As I said, the caliber of some of these committeemen is much stronger. It makes me a little more optimistic about what's happening.
Well, we look at that district, the 17th district. It doesn't have a huge black population.
No.
It's pretty white and working class, but there is a decent Hispanic population. So it touches on some of those minority voters that you're talking about. And we're seeing more and more Hispanics coming towards the Republican Party. Let's be real here. I mean, Esther Joy King ran a decent campaign. There were some things that could have been better, and she only lost by 4. We're looking at a presidential election year now where Trump's going to outperform how he did last time around. You know, anything can happen here. The 17th is absolutely in play. Looks like McGraw and the NRCC are doing whatever they can to make that happen. Let's keep moving along because we got more topics to get to. The digital ad war is absolutely in full throttle right now, especially in House districts throughout the state of Illinois. HRO is up with a bunch of ads. Democratic Party is up with ads everywhere. AFP is up with ads everywhere. A bunch of other individual outside groups are up with ads. If you live in one of these targeted districts or even tier 2 districts and you go online, you're probably seeing ad after ad after ad. But the ad wars have begun for sure, certainly on the digital side. And we're seeing some of that, you know, throughout some of these districts. I've got a few that I'd like to point to, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. Just curious if you guys are seeing any of these ads that you've seen either on the Republican side or the Democrat side that you want to call out as being particularly good or bad. Feel free to kind of jump in now.
Well, I have to give credit to the House Republicans a little bit. They're out with their 6-second ad buys on Facebook right now, which I don't know how much you're getting out of 6 seconds, but I will say that the production value of many of these ads is a lot better than the one that they had put out in the Liz Bishop district out in House District 76, which was good content, not good production. This one kind of lacks in content, but the production value goes up a lot. So I'll give them a little bit credit for having a better production value, but like 6 seconds, is that?
Well,
does that
actually,
work? I don't know.
I want to give them credit for that. So I've been trying to get political entities to understand that you've got 6 seconds. That's it. That's all you get. These 30-second ads, these 60-second ads, there's a place for them in politics. But if you're going to do digital ads, people are scrolling. You actually don't have 6 seconds. You have 3 seconds, let alone 6 seconds. And so I do, again, I have in the past been a little bit harsh to HRO, and I will also in the future, including on this episode. However, on the 6-second thing, I'm glad to see someone finally pay attention to that. Yes, you do need longer ads for many other things, but on social media ads, especially like Facebook, people are scrolling past. You've only got a few seconds. So I actually love that they're doing it, Chris. I think to your point, there is some, I'll talk about some of the content of the ads next, but in terms of that 6-second, I actually think it's smart political strategy, and more people ought to be doing it.
Well,
they've got a good variety on that. Of, you know, they've got the 6-second one, and then they have, you know, 30 seconds. I think there's one that's like in that teen range. So they've got kind of a wide swath. You know, different, a little different style, but I think it's effective. And I've been seeing some of those ads here in the Metro East, so it's good.
Yeah, I mean, my question is who they're running the ads for. you look at the list of candidates they're running the ads for. We know that they really, really like Gabby Shanahan because McCombie's personally involved in that race, and I respect that. But got a lot of money spent and a lot of ads. The most ads are for Gabby Shanahan, and what is like the 5th or 6th or 7th best pickup opportunity for us. And they're missing some of the others that are much better pickup opportunities. Really, right now, the only ads they have up for are Jackie Haas, which is a hold seat, Nicola Ha, who's in basically a safe hold seat, and then Gabby Shanahan. And then there's some for Brandon Schweitzer, which is good to see because that's going to be one of our toughest hold seats. But it's interesting to see where they are and where they aren't playing. There's some pretty important races for us that aren't showing up in that list. And I know like people like Schmidt, he's running his own ads, but not with a lot of money behind it. HRO's not coming in with cash for that, clearly, because there's only a few $100 between those ads for Schmidt. Same with Jake Keevan. He's paying for his own ads, and I don't think HRO's paying for him because it's just a few $100. So I kind of question a little bit where the money's being spent, I'll be honest. As much as I love Gabby Shanahan as a candidate, that's, I mean, in the list of your high priorities for HRO, that's got to be, 6th or 7th or 8th, not 1 or 2. So I do question that a little bit, but I won't hammer on it too much.
I think one of the things that we're missing is YouTube. I know Facebook but the reliability of Facebook and the ability to shadow ban people and whatnot. One of the fastest growing medium is YouTube, and people are going on YouTube for a lot of content. I'm not sure how you advertise on YouTube, but they are doing advertising. And anybody that's listening to this that's thinking about running some ads, you ought to look at YouTube because they're doing some phenomenal work, huge reach, bigger than Netflix, and I think it's fairly reasonable.
If you look at YouTube ads, by the way, you do only have 5 or 6 seconds before you can skip the ad, so you really have only that time to make a point. As far as what I've seen,
I'll just clarify. Let me just make this point. It's very easy to put your ads up. It's via Google that you do it, that you put those ads up on YouTube. We do it for all of our clients. I haven't seen ad buys on YouTube. I don't want to say they're not doing it just because I haven't seen it, because that doesn't prove they're not doing it. It just proves that I haven't seen it. So I'll simply say they absolutely ought to be doing it. We're doing that for all of our clients. So Dan, I hope they're doing it, because that's a great place to be advertising. And you're going to get a lot more play. Facebook right now, it's dropped down. I'll be honest. When we spend our advertising dollars for our clients, Facebook used to be number 1, number 2. It's down to number 5 or number 6, just based on how limited the reach is nowadays on Facebook. So there is a lot of focus on Facebook. I'll do some digging, Dan, and hopefully by next week I can have an answer on whether or not the House Republicans are on YouTube, because it is one of the first places we go to for our clients. Go ahead, TJ.
Yeah, well, on Facebook, the interesting thing on Facebook is if you see an ad for somebody, you can there's a place to click and see, like, if you see Schneider for Congress, you can click and you can see all the ads that he's running right now, all the ads that he had been running. It's available for you or me to see. I don't think you get to see the engagement numbers he has, but you can also see what the other side's doing. I know Maria Peterson's running a lot of Facebook ads. My sister lives up in Libertyville, which is part of that 51st, the 52nd district with Marty McLaughlin, and they're getting a lot of Maria Peterson ads. I've actually seen Facebook. The one thing I will say about Facebook too is Seth Cohen's run some Facebook ads. He's running in IL9 for Congress. Doesn't have a lot of funds, and he's put up a few Facebook sponsored posts, and he's gotten a lot of engagement. He brought out a lot of people who have some very we'll just say avant-garde views on Jewish people, and they are clearly Schakowsky supporters. I don't know who's going to tell them, but I think the other the other thing though he's gotten a lot more engagement. He put up an ad. He put an ad of Dan Chakowski giving Nabila Saeed a kiss on. It was a screenshot of a tweet. She loves Nabila Saeed, and he put this ad up saying Nabila Saeed put out the letter from that from the other House members decrying Israel, and Jan Schakowsky supports Nabila Saeed. He bought those ads, and they ran mostly in the part of his district that went through that district with where Tasiu Fadike, who's on last week, her district, got a lot of engagement. And apparently people took note who were supporting Tasi that it seemed to be helping her out a little bit. So there is some engagement to be had on Facebook.
Well, just for clarity's sake, there is a portal that you can look on Google to see ads that are being run, and under House Republican majority,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of ads from 2022 where they ran ads for a lot of their candidates. None yet in 2024. It does look like they know how to do it and that they do it, but it seems like in 22 they didn't start until the middle of October, which would be too late, as Terri said. We can't wait till the middle of October, so hopefully they get rolling on these ads sooner this time around. But it does seem like they've done it. There's a lot of these ads up here, both static and video, that were put up back in 2022. So hopefully they start rolling on that pretty soon.
So
And
Collin,
I-
let me throw something in really quick, because I don't have a general election opponent in November, but I had that crazy primary. And in that crazy primary, I tried some things I haven't been able to do before. One of them was streaming, to Dan's point. And so it not only is streaming not super expensive because it's cheaper than cable, but you can also identify where you want it to go. I mean,
Yep.
if you only wanted to go to houses on such and such a street that are streaming YouTube or Netflix or whatever, you can narrow it down to just that. The other thing is, and I know, I'm sure other people have done this. It was my first time to really key in on text messaging, but it would cost me $16,000 to do a mailing that might or might not get to the house within 10 days, but I could do text messaging in real time. So if something popped up on, I'm watching Fox News, I see that Trump says something that I really wanted to key in because I've got a 80% Trump district. I could jump on right away and really in a matter of hours have a text message go out, and they're going to look at that text message for just as long as they're going to look at that mailer when it comes. But instead of $16,000, I could do it for $5,000 or $6,000. And actually you can do them for as low as $3,000 or $4,000. So streaming, definitely a way to go.
Yeah,
And
that's Terri, that's the first place. That's called OTT, over the top advertising. It's one of the best ways to advertise. It's the first place we go to be honest, nowadays. It's targeted, it's effective. So yeah, for those watching this, you should absolutely be looking to get your videos out on OTT. And then as you mentioned, texting. We're huge fans of texting. You can do, it's not just the text content or just words. You can do videos, you can do images. Texting is incredibly effective if done right. If not done like these national campaigns where it's just, a wall of text and please give me money, that doesn't really work. But if done in an engaging way, and especially on texting, have volunteers at the office ready to respond, because texting is done best when texting is done like field. People do texting right now like it's robocalls. Here's my message, I hope you see it. That's awful. Do it like it's field contact. Put something out and ask them a question. Do you agree that we should be spending $1 billion on migrants, or should we maybe spend that money on something else? What do you think? Get them to respond back, and then have you and volunteers back in the campaign office so that as those responses come in, you can actually have a conversation with the voter. Texting is field. It's not paid outreach. It's a field outreach. And if done right, you can have dozens, if not hundreds of conversations, real conversations with the voters in your district. And so I love that Terri said that, because those are some of the first places we go to spend money for our clients. And they're way more effective nowadays than even Facebook, which has really fallen off in effectiveness over the last 4 to 6 years. All right, let's keep moving along just because we have a lot more to get to here. Our friend Patrick Finkson over at the Illinoize listed his top 10 districts, his top 10 legislative seats that he thinks are the most likely to flip. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at that. I know Michael and Chris, but we keep losing Michael, so hopefully he comes back. I know they've seen it. Curious what you guys think on that top 10 list that he put out. Whether you think it's overly pessimistic, overly optimistic, or if there's certain races you think he should have had higher or lower. Feel free to jump on in, and I'll share my thoughts towards the end.
I'm curious. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let's let
Go
Chris
ahead,
go ahead. Go, Chris.
Well, I'm very similar to Patrick in that I'm the eternal pessimist. So I relate to Patrick a little bit here, but I do think his order is a little bit off. For example, he has House District 79 at 5, and I think everybody on this podcast kind of agrees that Jackie Haas is fine. The Dems are making a play at it, and they're going to go all behind Billy Morgan because he's a pretty decent candidate. And if it wasn't Jackie Haas, he might have a shot. But I think 5 is too high for House District 79. I would put House District 45 way higher. It's at 9. I would put that at like, I would basically have swapped those two if it was my decision.
45 Grant?
45 is
Rebeletti against Duder.
Rebeletti, okay.
Duder. I would have put that higher. I think we're all in agreement. 114 is the #1 district in the state right now. Schmidt and Greenwood's going to go down to the wire. It basically goes back and forth every week of who we think is going to win that race, just because of what we're feeling like. Listen, Schmidt can win, but it's going to be a tough race. But other than that, I think you had to find 10 races in this state that were targeted. I thought Finkston did a very good job, but I would have swapped a few of them. I think he might be too pessimistic about 79, and he might be like maybe also too pessimistic about 45. I think Republicans have a better chance of winning 45 than Democrats have of winning.
Finkston has blown up my cell phone about Jackie Haas and Billy Morgan. I'll be honest, he's drinking the Dem Kool-Aid on that. They are so confident. They think they got Jackie Haas right where they want her. And we can't take it for granted. We absolutely cannot take it for granted. But I'll make some sort of a bet with Finkston on election night about that race, because Haas is going to pull it off. I'm not worried about it. But Dems, they are chirping about 79, and Patrick's been drinking that Kool-Aid a little bit.
So here's the first indication that there might be a problem in 79. When we went up to Manteno to talk about the Goshen battery plant, Jackie boycotted it. We're going back on October 3rd. We'll see if Jackie shows up, and we'll see where she is on that battery plant in Manteno.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know she's out there. Obviously, certain issues play, and sometimes they may not align with certain issues, but we'll see what happens there. Anybody else have thoughts on the list? TJ, I know you were trying to jump in earlier.
I mentioned Marty McLaughlin earlier. I really hope that we get the cavalry out for him. I know there's a rift between Representative McCombie and him, and HRO is not going to. He doesn't participate in HRO. HRO is not going to participate with him. But I think that we need to get the cavalry out for him, because he is a valuable representative for Republicans outside of his district as well. He's carried a lot of water for the elephant, so to speak, and I think he's also been a voice we need down in Springfield.
Now that's an interesting. I guess we look at that. Marty was put up as an alternative candidate for leadership.
Yes,
and it didn't work, and everybody that supported Marty voted for Tony. And yet there still seems to be this animosity, and we all, thought we were, this is a democracy, and if you have a different choice, they'll put the person up, and if they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. And this is the kind of thing that Jim Durkin did, and he went after his favorite candidates at the expense of the others. We lost seats. If we lose this seat, it'll be a major stain on the House Republicans.
Well, and I think to that point, Dan, we've talked about it on this podcast, that you can't, in that role, you can't focus on your favorites or your least favorites. You can't do it. Whether you like the person or don't like the person. Listen, on my podcast, I've had competitors who take money away from my family by taking clients from us, and I have them on because we're all on the same dang team. When it's election season, none of that matters. You can't put more money into races just because you happen to like somebody, and then someone like McLaughlin, who's in a tough race, and he's being outspent 100-1 in that race right now, and saying, I don't like him, and he doesn't participate in the caucus, so he's on his own. If he loses that seat, that hurts us big time as a party.
He does. He does participate.
The good news is some outside groups like 150 and some others are going to be coming in that district. AFP, I know, is coming in that district. So even though HRO isn't coming in for Marty, hopefully some of these other groups come in and save him. Because Marty, I'll be honest, I love the guy. He's not running the best of races, but some of these outside groups, it looks like, are coming in, and hopefully that will be enough.
We'll be up there Monday, knocking doors for him.
Good, awesome.
Really,
and Dan, just for those, I know what you mean by that. When you say we'll be up there, what are you saying when you say that?
There'll be a group of folks going up Monday to knock doors for Marty.
Nice, awesome.
So I'd like to weigh in on those as well. So in the case of Marty, Marty's made some questionable choices throughout, which makes it a little bit difficult for him, I think. Some of the things that he said, even if it's just to who's the mattress guy, the pillow guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, just some little things like that that maybe he could have chosen some places that he attended or some things that he had said. more wisely.
Yeah.
Jackie Haas, I think Jackie's going to be just fine, because no matter what the issue is at Goshen, it really, I think, doesn't as much boil down to a particular issue in a district as it does whether you take care of the folks. And that's coming from, I live in a region that these are two Democrats, but, they held their positions for years and years. And that was Paul Simon and Ken Gray. And both of them would say very few people lose because of a vote they've taken in Springfield. They lose because they didn't take care of the folks. And Jackie Haas takes care of the people of her district. To the issue of Kevin Schmidt, I think Kevin pulls that off in the end. I think Kevin works his district. Sometimes Kevin can be a little bit dry and very hard-headed, but let's face it, the Democrats drew their districts there to protect Jay Hoffman, and they threw Greenwood under the bus. And now for Greenwood to come back, I don't think it has anything to do with how much money they're going to spend there. They drew a district that they're going to have to spend millions and millions on if they want to win it for Greenwood. But Greenwood was lazy in regard to her district when she had the seat. Kevin has not been lazy. He is struggling a little bit with raising money. I think he's having difficulties with raising money because of the person that he chose as his fundraiser. Because there are some individuals who will not attend his fundraisers because of the person he chose to do that, right? And so you got to take some of those things into consideration sometimes. So probably Michael knows that district more than anyone else, and I'm curious to know what Michael thinks about that particular race.
Yeah, and as we pass it over, Michael, before we do that, just Terry, I want to point out something you said. I've been saying since the remap that the Democrats way overreached. They made a huge mistake with these maps. The only thing that has saved their butts is the fact that Trump is as unpopular as he is throughout most of the state, not all of it, but most of the state. Because when you see regions like the Metro East area where that Trump factor isn't killing us as much, they're suddenly realizing some of these districts just aren't what they thought they were. And I've been looking at these maps. Chris and I have been looking at these maps since they came out. And a lot of these districts, the only reason why they're so deep blue is because of the Trump factor. You remove that, you get towards the end of this decade. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the Trump factor isn't killing us in the suburbs at that point. And a lot of these districts that the Democrats thought were perfectly safe, they're going to be spending millions to have to defend. The future is absolutely bright because they overstretched themselves. They got overly cocky on that map. And I'm hoping, beyond hope, that they have to pay the price for that as we get later in this decade. Michael, go ahead. You were going to talk about the Schmidt race.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I mean, I guess is Terry leaving us?
I got to go. Yep.
To our audience, Terry was kind enough to join us, even though she's stuck in downtown Chicago in a conference room after an event. She only had an hour. So, Terry, thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Senator.
Michael, carry on.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think that Kevin Schmidt, his constituent services are some of the best that I've seen, and I think that makes a big difference. It's a strong contrast to the constituent services that LaToya had when she held that seat. Obviously, he's already knocked the district one time. They've knocked the entire district once. They're starting to knock the district a second time. And I don't think LaToya has been out nearly as much as he has. And then you've got some of these outside groups like AFP, Local 150, that are allocating resources towards this race in addition to what, Kevin is doing and what HRO is doing on his behalf. I know that he's up on OTT. I haven't seen it personally, but I've had some people tell me that, they've seen those ads on Hulu and Netflix and some of those platforms.
Good.
So Kevin is really taking it seriously, and we need to keep him in this seat, and I think that we will. Another one, for our region is that Jake Heaven versus Katie Stewart one. And that one seems to be going very well, especially on the door numbers. Obviously, we're not going to have.
So do you agree or disagree with Finkston on that being the 7th most likely to flip? Would you put it higher?
I would maybe put it like 5. I would definitely move it up at least 2 on that list. But, overall, I think Finkston is, got a pretty good lineup.
Listen, he's our buddy. We like him. But, it's boring if you don't poke him a little bit. I think you move that up a little bit. Another thing on the LaToya one that I thought was pretty funny is that after last week's episode of Smoke-Filled Room, we talked about that race. There was an article in the password protected section on CapFacts where Rich Miller basically, fact checked the oppo that House Republicans were putting out there via the poll that they did.
And Rich Miller's like, yeah, all this Oppo research is spot on. It's accurate. And Latoya Greenwood made 2 Facebook posts, in a 24-hour period, calling it fake news and that she's tired of the negativity. So I definitely think that some of that Oppo is rattling
all the mudslinging
her,
that
which is
they've done
good.
against Schmidt, and then she's tired of the negativity when they haven't even slung the mud yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and last time, when she ran, we want to talk about fake news, last time Oliver Mail, Oliver Digital was talking about Kevin Schmidt's voting record in Springfield, and he wasn't even a member yet. So if we want to talk about fake news, she's great at that.
Yeah, seriously. A couple things in the top 10 list. Honestly, I thought it was pretty good. I want to poke Patrick, so I'm going to find some things in the margins just because I like to get his text messages after he listens. First thing is just he's convinced how the Republicans are going to lose seats in November. So you look at his first 5 top flips are all Republicans losing to Democrats, us losing a seat. And I think that's a bit pessimistic overall. You're saying that it's more likely that we lose Haas's seat than we pick up any seats whatsoever. I certainly disagree with that. And I'm not an optimist. Ask my wife; she's the optimist of the family. But I think that's a bit pessimistic. I'd also look. Listen, I have fallen prey to this. I've talked a lot about 76. I like Liz Bishop. There's a lot of people working on her race who are friends of mine. We've given them a lot of coverage on these podcasts. But don't get me wrong; it's not our top pickup opportunity. I think people are drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much here, saying that that's the top Republican pickup opportunity, even more so than knocking off Katie Stewart, even more so than winning the open race in 45, even more so than winning 51. I think that's a bit much. I love that Liz Bishop is working hard. They're doing a lot. They've made that race way more in play than anybody else believed it would be. But let's be real, it's not the top pickup for Republicans, at least not yet. So I think that's a little bit high there. So I'd quibble at the margins. I get why he put the 45 as low as he did. It's suburban. The Trump factor really kills us there, but it's still an open district. And what people are forgetting is that Trump is performing about 3 points better statewide than he did last time around. So everybody's looking at Republicans did this badly last time around. They're saying we're going to do even worse. Well, Trump's doing better than last time around. My directions were wrong there, so forgive me. But Trump's doing better than last time around. And so how do you get that cognitive dissonance where you say Trump's going to do better in Illinois, but all the Republicans are going to do worse? I mean, we've gotten pretty much to our floor in this state. Let's be real. It's really hard to lose even more seats, though we could. I mean, we like losing as Republicans. But when you look at statewide, the fact that Trump will likely do better than he did last time around, it's hard to say that we're going to just get wiped out in November.
Collin, okay, so let's be intelligent here for a second, Collin. Why is Trump doing 3 points better since now than he was in 2016 when this whole thing started? It has nothing to do with just like random suburbanites decided 3% more that they like Trump over the years. No, Trump's doing better in Illinois because there's a turnout increase in Southern Illinois and working class areas.
No, he had that last time around. He had it last time around.
No, there's a lower minority turnout, which decreases the Democratic's vote share. When they stop figuring how to turn out Hispanic voters, and that combined with Hispanic voters' natural transition to the Republican Party, that's a shift. Black voters aren't turning up more. No, here's a bold take. Trump will do worse in some affluent suburban communities this time than he's ever done before.
The districts that aren't even in play, they don't matter.
Well, okay, let's talk about 45. You're making me disagree with myself here, Collin, because look at district like 45. 45's got like Elmhurst, Oak Brook, Hinsdale. This is top tier affluent communities. Trump's going to do worse in this year than he's ever done before, possibly. Okay, the reason, when you talk about a 3 point shift for the Republican Party, it's like, Mary Gill in the 35th House district is going to do worse than you would expect her to, which means she wins by 10 instead of wins by 15.
Were these factors in play in 2022? Yes, they were. And we lost that district by 0.8. This is my point, is everyone's like, oh, that district is way out of play. We lost it by less than 1%. And all of these factors existed then too.
Right. But there's different factors going into this, Collin. I agree. I mean, I'll say this. If the House Republicans pick up any seat in November, it's going to be House District 45. But it's going to have nothing to do with the fact that Trump just somehow did 3 points better in that district this time around. It's literally going to be Dennis Reboletti is a good candidate who ran a good campaign, and people down ballot voted Republican. That's why we would win House District 45. This isn't like this idea that like somehow there's going to be like a 3-point shift towards Trump in House District 45. There's not. That's not how this works.
But how it works is the overall environment is slightly better for Republicans in 2024 than it was in 22 and than it was in 20. And that's the only point I'm making here, is that overall the environment is slightly better for us. And yet everyone's like, it's going to be the end of the world. It's worse. They are drinking the Kool-Aid, and a little bit, my buddy Patrick's drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit here, that suddenly it's going to be this massive blue tsunami in November when the numbers don't back that up.
Well,
No.
the numbers, you agree with that, Collin, in like District 79. Like District 79, we're going to do better in like 22 or even 20 because of how that district is drawn. But you look at other suburban districts and you say to yourself, that's not how this works. Okay. And there's going to be other issues like Schmidt. Why would Kevin Schmidt lose? Kevin Schmidt would win because black turnout is going to be higher in 2024 than it was in 2022. So that would mean that there was a shift to the left of to the left of where it was in 2022 in 2024 because of a turnout issue. You can't
Right, see,
look
but
at
what you're conflating is I'm talking affinity, you're talking propensity. I agree that turnout factors matter, but everybody's ignoring affinity right now. I'm only talking about affinity, and you're trying to make it look like you're right in this argument by flipping it around and talking propensity. I'll talk propensity with you on another episode. I'm fine with that. But affinity is closer to Republicans than it has been the last 2 election cycles. That's the only point that I'm making. The environment is better for Republicans. Will we take advantage? Will we run strong campaigns and turn out the vote? There's a conversation to be had about that, and maybe we won't. You mentioned 45, we're running a good race. Nobody's saying that, to be honest. They're actually saying that we're not running a great race in 45. So that won't be the reason if we pull that off. But the point here is that everyone's saying it's going to be this massive tsunami for Democrats, and the data doesn't back that up.
No.
Listen, Caulkins knows we got our bet going. I'm going to say this. I'm on Team Patrick Finkston, even though I might not agree with the districts he thinks the House is going to lose. Okay, I don't see how you look at the House map as it is and say that we are somehow going to gain seats and that we're better off than we were in 2020.
Did I say we were going to gain seats?
Well, no, but you're like, you think we're going to break even then, Collin?
We're looking at, he's saying that the most likely outcome here is that we're going to lose 5 seats. That his top 5 are all House Republicans losing. So the most likely outcome to him is a loss of 5 seats. I'm saying that is way too pessimistic.
It's possible.
I mean, anything's possible. It's possible we could wake up tomorrow and agree on something. I mean, anything's possible.
God
Who else
forbid,
has thoughts?
Collin. God forbid.
I love you, buddy.
I think what you might want to see is what I've seen up here in Northfield Township and New Trier and adjacent townships. Ticket splitting among Democrats seem to have evaporated after 2014. There are a lot of Democrats who
TJ, you made that point
Republicans.
earlier. That I remember back in those early years of the Trump era between 2016 and 2022 or 2020, how many times I'd be at a doorstep or one of our clients would be at a doorstep and they'd say, I like you, but I'm voting against you because I hate Trump. That's not happening as much anymore. They're saying I hate Trump, but I maybe will consider voting for you. There's more opportunities for ticket splitting today than there were from 2016 to 2020.
And what we saw was Republicans were defecting to vote for Biden or for Hillary or even for Pritzker because they didn't like Bailey or they were really mad at Rauner. So I think that are we going to start seeing ticket splitting return where you have in our area, you have all these people who are center left or a little more leftward leaning who like to brag. They vote for, they don't vote straight ticket because they look at the people. And I think that's kind of gone away in the rage regarding Trump beating Hillary and Pritzker with his Pritzker bucks running around. I see a lot less of that energy. There's still a little bit of that there, but
you
can bring some Democrats over in some of these districts that they're not happy with what's going on at the state level, and they've met Jackie Haas, and they decided she's a good representative for them. Even though she is further right than they are, Haas is probably going to be all right.
Well, and I think you see the Republican Party leaning into that. You saw they did that press conference in Chicago trying to get and Kathy Selve even said, no matter how you feel about the presidential race, focus local. I mean, they definitely are starting to push that narrative, which frankly, I'd push even more because we're not going to win Illinois for the presidential race. So let's stop focusing on it. Don't worry about it. Just say, regardless of your feelings at the top of the ticket, are you happy with yada, yada, yada? These are Illinois issues. These are local issues. Focus on these candidates. We got to do more of that as a party, which means, I'll be honest, less emails about the federal races where we have very limited chance to win other than aisle 17, and more focus on state races, on county races. We've got to put the focus more locally if we're going to win, because we're not winning nationally. And let's be honest, in the federal races, as much as I love some of these candidates, other than 17, we don't have chances to flip some of these seats. As much as I love the candidates, we've got to get the focus more local.
Right.
And I think that plays right into it. Are you better off now than you were even 2 years ago, let alone 4 years ago here in Illinois?
Yeah.
I mean, you see what's coming out of Springfield and all of the things, and you know, we don't have to go back and relitigate the no cash bail or all that other stuff. But the economic climate in this state is dire, and people vote their pocketbook. And when your property taxes go up 50% and your utility bills go up 100% and your groceries, I mean, people, I think, are looking at their home, their own situation, and then who's representing me? And I'm anti-incumbent. I think we're going to see some of that. If the Republicans can play that card and do that, they may pick up maybe one, could be two, but I think my dollar's pretty safe.
I think
let's go straight. TJ, I'm going right back to you here because
Yeah.
I want to go to that local focus. You're a Republican committeeman for a township in Cook County. So you're on the front lines here of local races mattering. And we want to talk about how you can't ignore these down ballot races in 2024. And by the way, ballots or petitions are being passed right now for the consolidated elections in 2025. So we cannot ignore local campaigns. As a matter of fact, we need to focus way more on local. The NRCC is out there. They can spend millions on aisle 17 and some of these other congressional races. We've got to focus locally. We've got strong judicial candidates, countywide candidates, local candidates that deserve attention, especially from our Republicans and conservatives around the state. I want to pass it to you for your thoughts on this, because I know it's a big topic that you've really been pushing.
Sure. I mean, well, to start with, you mentioned the judicial races, and they're certainly important, especially in Cook and Sangamon County, because that's really where you can challenge the constitutionality of laws right now. But I'm very grateful there's a Sangamon County judge that agreed with many of us about SB 2412. And we had slated candidates who are able to run and be on the ballot because an honest judge looked at it and said, there's no way that this is constitutional to implement it right away. We have five judges running in all of Cook County. One's running countywide. Her name's Tien Glaub. She's from Chicago. She was recruited by a little working group we had, led by Laura Kottleman, who's can't remember her ward. She's a committee woman.
Laura's awesome. We keep trying to get her to come on the podcast because I love Laura. She is
awesome.
But
she recruited Tien, and she led the effort to get the petition circulation done. So we slated her. We slated another candidate in the 10th subcircuit, which touches Glenview, and he was from Glenview, and unfortunately he got knocked off the ballot. Don't sign for Democrats if you're Republican, because later if you sign for the Republican, your signature doesn't count. I think that's what cost him. We have 4 subcircuit judges that all touch Northfield Township. They're the only 4 running in Cook County besides Tien. In the 18th subcircuit, which hits the west part of Glenview and then goes into Elk Grove and Wheeling Townships, and Main Township, is Lynn Palak. She's running the 18th subcircuit. She's running against a guy named John Hawk. She is a former state's attorney. She worked in criminal law, and she does a lot of family law. She defends some of the worst domestic cases you can think of, women in abusive situations and so forth. She'd be an excellent judge. She's out there every day knocking on doors. I actually I owe her and her campaign some stuff because they've asked for it. And then we have 3 in the 12th subcircuit, and that's traditionally been a strong Republican subcircuit. They chopped off kind of the southern edge. Now it's a thin band that runs all the way at Palatine, deep into Palatine Township, we have 3 people. One is Matt Taylor. He's from Palatine. He was a police officer for about 15 years before becoming an attorney, and I think he's been an attorney for 20. And then Matthew Taylor's running against a Democrat who's apparently brought in a lot of funding. We have Pamela Kern-Smith. She's from Prospect Heights. She has a very diverse experience as an attorney. She'd be an excellent judge. She's running against Frank Andreu, and Andreu, his name was on a law firm until last year. He was an appointed.
Hey, TJ, sorry, we got to keep moving along.
Yeah, keep it moving. Then we have Maria McCarthy. She was in the state attorney's office for 30 years, prosecuting some of the most heinous crimes you could think of, and she's running in the 12th Sub-Circuit as well. These are all important races. You want to get people with courtroom experience who've been on both sides of the table. So please pay attention to those. And if you're able to donate to these guys or to knock on doors, please do. I think something else in Cook County, we've got a countywide seat that's open. It's Cook County Clerk. Karen Yarbrough unfortunately passed away, and because of the timing of her passing, there's a special election for county clerk. We have a woman named Michelle Pennington. She's running as a Republican running countywide in Cook County. You can tell me about the chances and everything, but if you care about election integrity and you live in Cook County, this is your candidate. You should donate to her. You should help her out. She's put her professional life kind of on hold. She's got children in high school. She's out there. She was at that press conference with Kathy Salvi. Go out and help people like that, because even should she not win and she posts a respectable showing, it should improve the prospects for every following year. I think people don't understand that. They look at some of these races and say, well, that's solid Democrat. Well, yeah. Well, if you wind up coming out with like 40% of the vote, people might pay a little more attention the next time. And the Democrats might start having to invest some of their resources there. So you don't see Maria Peterson with however millions of dollars she has, because she just so desperately needs to be the 52nd state representative in Illinois, and be just like everybody else. So
these races matter. I mean, these races absolutely matter. I'm so glad you brought up the judicial races, because people just don't tend to pay attention to those. Selfishly, Maria McCarthy is a good friend, so I'm glad you brought her up in the 12th. We even saw just this week in the 3rd appellate district, which if you're in DuPage, Will, Kankakee, Iroquois, Grundy, LaSalle, or Bureau, you're in the 3rd appellate. And it just came out this week. Illinois Republican Party is putting out an ad about the Democratic candidate, John Anderson, who's got 33 run-ins with the law. He's been convicted or pled guilty 25 times, retail theft, reckless driving, transportation of open alcohol in a vehicle, driving on a suspended license. This is a Democratic candidate for judge.
He has courtroom experience, Collin.
For the appellate court in Illinois.
Exactly. What's your point, Collin? I mean,
He
knows the judicial. He knows it inside and out.
He's just impacted.
So people got to pay attention to these races. Kenton Scarron is the Republican candidate in that race. You got to look at these races that are down ballot, because they matter. And I say all the time, the lower the race is on the ballot, typically the more of an impact it has on your life. And yet it's the opposite. We pay attention to the top and we ignore these judicial races, these local races, the township, the county races, when frankly they have a much bigger impact on our lives.
And keep your eye on the ball on that. And if you're sitting out there and you're mad about your school district, raising the levy by the maximum every year and not performing, or you're not happy with what the park district's doing or what the library district's doing, or the village. I mean, in Northbrook, the village board in Northbrook has just gone completely around the bend. I mean, completely fiscally irresponsible. There's a big parcel of land that used to be a country club, sat vacant for 9 years. They put brakes on development because there wasn't enough affordable housing for them. And so DuPage County came in and dropped 5 times what the land was worth so they can put their water treatment plant there. And our hands are tied. That's just going to be a mile from where I'm sitting right now. But they're also giving tax abatements and loans to companies to come in. It doesn't make any sense given the other things going on in town. People are very upset with some of these local
and these local issues move votes. And especially if you're a candidate for office, we've won races for federal office. We've won races for state office, focusing on these local issues, because it's the kind of thing people don't think about things like inflation. They don't think issues, but they certainly think about, water treatment plant being put up a mile from their house. Those are the kind of things that local voters will care about. And it shows you care. It shows you're paying attention if you get engaged in those local issues, which move votes. TJ, just for time, I got to keep us moving. So
Sure,
any
sure.
closing thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's just that I don't like the fact that we have these elections in April, so we're doing some of this stuff now while people are supposed to be paying attention to the fall elections. I think it's sort of sleight of hand by local governments having it, or the state government allowing these things to be in April, in February. But just keep your eye on the ball, and also townships have partisan township races. We have a caucus coming up in December. I know Palatine. I think there's a possibility there's going to be a referendum for 708 district, which is another taxing district, which everyone knows we don't have enough taxing districts in Illinois. So let's add some more. The Democrats, your friendly Democrats in Palatine and Arlington Heights and other places think we don't have enough. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So just keep your eye on that while we worry about hitting the finish line here.
Appreciate it, TJ. Thanks for bringing that up. All right. With what limited time.
Local issues matter. Local, I take it right back to you, Collin. Local issues matter. Goshen is a major local issue in the 79.
Yeah, agreed.
Pay attention.
All right. So with what limited time we have left, we're going to do what we call our quick hits. We want to talk about things that are in the news or things that are happening in general, larger, higher level stuff that some campaigns or political organizations can use to their advantage or to other people's disadvantage. We don't spend a lot of time on these. I'll intro it. I'll give the details. And then anybody who has thoughts, feel free to jump in. Of course, we always kind of give you a chance in the closing section to give your thoughts on anything you want. But a couple quick things we want to talk about. I don't want to get lost in the national conversation about the Teamsters. I know we'd all love to talk for 20 minutes about how spineless they were, and maybe somebody will do so in the Clown of the Week portion of our as we close down the podcast. The one thing I want to point to this is simply this. We've been talking about for the last few weeks, especially how union households are moving more and more to Republicans. And what I saw from that Teamsters situation was when they polled their members and they found that 58% backed Trump compared to 31% who backed Harris. That's almost 2-1. That is massive movement to Republicans. Because if you remember, if you look back in that election, in the last election in 2020, hold on, let me get these numbers here. Trump lost union members by 8 in 2016. So you see that these numbers are moving in our favor. If maybe he wins these groups, maybe he doesn't, but winning, especially amongst the Teamsters 2-1 when they've endorsed Democrats for several decades, that's pretty big. And then you see all sorts of other factors that we've talked about in previous weeks about unions. They're moving more towards Republicans. They're open to our message as we become more and more the party of working families. One of our biggest pickup opportunities is among union households. Anybody have any quick thoughts on that?
Hey, look, I'm not going to call the Teamsters the Clown of the Week this week because in and of itself,
I have a feeling Butler will, but we'll see.
keeping them neutral is still a victory for the National Republican Party because it does show at least some disagreement with the National Democratic Party from one of the largest unions in the entire nation. Again, would I have wanted the endorsement for Trump? Certainly. That would have been fantastic. It would have been great for the movement of union members to the Republican Party. But it's still a good thing in itself that they're staying neutral. There is disagreement with the Democratic ticket right now. I think it's because of, the Teamsters want to unionize Amazon and some other major businesses, and Kamala Harris is tied in with some of these major corporations and the like. That might be part of it. That's just a guess. But, I'm keeping them neutral. I think it's a win. Maybe not the biggest win, but it was a win. So, seems good.
To the point that I made of the discussion, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that you see what's going on. This movement's been going on for 4 or 5 years, and we're watching the union members go into the voting booth not on primary elections, but on general elections, and they can vote for whoever they want to. And you can see we've watched this happen over the last 2 cycles. If I was the president of the AFL-CIO here in Illinois, I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned about your members.
Well, especially Dan, when they seem to keep going against their members. I mean, right after the national Teamsters said, no, we're not going to make an endorsement. Of course, here we go this week. The Illinois Teamsters said, we're what was the unanimously, we have made the decision to endorse Trump. And I'm like, unanimously, I don't think the local, the members of the union, the local
Right.
union members of the Teamsters are unanimous in their support of Kamala Harris. But this is what we've talked about, where the union leadership, especially in Illinois, is
Right.
completely out of touch with their members. And I think you saw it with this Teamsters situation.
And look
Well,
what's
Colin,
going on with Stellantis. Look at Stellantis.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Well-
Big Democrat, Governor Pritzker, all this money, all this stuff. And look what's going on up there. And you think those union people, you think they're happy with that deal?
Look, Colin, here's my final point on the Teamster issue, specific to the point you mentioned earlier. My problem is that it seems that Republicans have like an underpants gnomes tier strategy when it comes to appealing to certain groups, where it's like, run on the ballot. Step 1 is run. Step 2 is blank. And then step 3 is win union households. There's no step 2 in any of this. And it applies for Hispanic voters. It applies for Black voters as well. That the idea is like, these voters are moving in our direction, guys. This is fantastic. But there's never anything done. Well, maybe not never. Never's not the right word.
But rarely.
But rarely is there ever anything done to actually reach out to these voters. And once these voters actually vote for you, these people do not want to work with unions and work with union members to actually do things to advance the goals of the working members, the working people of our state. That is my problem. There are some rhinos in this party who tell you should not do this at all. I oppose these rhinos. They oppose the president's agenda. But yeah, the point is,
listen,
that
I think your point is
bad
extremely valid. I absolutely give you credit for it. That we do this too often. We say, "Oh, Hispanics are coming our way, unions are coming our way," but we're not actually doing anything to make that happen. It's national trends. Great, I'm glad for that. But we got to get out there, get off our butts, and go do something about it. And it's the data has said now for years. To Dan's point, the data has said for years that union households absolutely want to come our direction, but we're not seeing it in Illinois like we're seeing it in many other states. Because to your point, Chris, we're not doing anything about it. So I think both of you definitely get points on that. All right, let's keep moving. Another thing here, I mentioned I was going to be a little bit less nice to HRO in this episode on one topic. It's just this one here because it keeps driving me crazy. The House Republicans specifically can't seem to get off this drug about talking about taxes. Everything is taxes, taxes, taxes. And we've talked about this so many times for several years now, that it's cost of living. It's not taxes. Taxes are part of cost of living, but the headline isn't taxes. The headline is cost of living. Chris, I know you maybe want to talk about this, about the grocery tax being a focus on a lot of these digital ads for Republicans because it's a tax and we can't seem to quit talking about taxes. My big thing is the online ads for Brandon Schweitzer. They blast Democrats, rightfully so, for spending $1 billion on benefits for non-citizens, but then they tie it to taxes. They don't tie it to anything else. The Senate Republicans have done a good job giving molding a good example here, modeling a good example of tying that to real world impact to the voters on the issue they care about right now, which is cost of living. But in this ad, it's Democrats raised taxes by $1 billion, then they turned around and spent $1 billion on benefits for non-citizens. I don't understand why we're having to force that tax connection when in every poll we see taxes is down in the bottom 5 or 6 of things that people care about. Should they care about taxes? Absolutely they should. But right now, with 6 weeks left in this election, roughly, I didn't do the math, there's no time. We can't force them to care about something they don't already care about. And right now, everyone agrees, nationwide, everyone agrees the issue for voters is cost of living. And so I say this to be helpful, not to be negative. Please, to candidates and to our House Republicans, you're close. You're almost there. But it's cost of living. It isn't taxes. Stop making that mistake, please.
Democrats are running on cost of living too, locally in House races. So, and taxes are for a lot of people just theoretical. They want to know how much it's going to cost. It's similar if you're buying a house. There are a lot of people who say, well, don't look at the price of the house. Think of what your monthly payment's going to be and how that fits into your budget. Because when you think about a house in 6 figures, it's kind of to most people, it's kind of like, that's a lot of money. I can't think of that, but okay, that mortgage rate I can deal, or that mortgage payment I can deal with. It should be the same thing. What is it costing us per month to live in Illinois? And it's not just taxes; it's what the regulations are costing us, and it's what all these compliance costs are.
It's utilities, it's healthcare, it's there's so much more that goes into it. And just to close out this point from me, and then obviously you guys add as much as you want on our last poll. Empower to Win our subscription platform in our poll in July that tested what are the top issues. We tested 12 issues. Taxes came in at 11th. It was 11 out of 12. It's not the focus of voters right now. And yet House Republicans, every ad they put out, we're going to lower your taxes. And it's missing the ball. It's so close, but it's missing.
Well, I think our brand is lowering taxes, so it's almost implicit at this point. We've built up into our brand so much. Was it George Will who once said that Republicans were only put on earth to lower our taxes? So how much do we have to, we should be saying dollar amount. How much is it going to cost you to live in Illinois, thanks to the Democrats?
So here's the thing about taxes. Voters do care about taxes, but they only care about taxes when the word tax is right in front of them. We saw this in 2020 with the graduated income tax amendment, what the Republicans called the progressive tax amendment. You have all of these districts that Collin likes to point to in his numbers sometimes, where the progressive income tax failed incredibly. We're talking like places where it lost by like 20, 30 points. But Democrats, other Democrats on the ballot, still won these districts by like 10, 15 points. So the voters, you can try and tie taxes to Democrats, but rarely will it work unless the word tax is right in front of them to make voters actually care about the issue. Now, specific to the grocery tax, I commend them for taking advantage of a bad situation, because the House Democrats made a brilliant political maneuver. We're going to abolish the grocery tax. We're going to, piss off all of these local mayors and municipalities for a cheap political victory, and the House Republicans they're riding with it. We're going to abolish the grocery tax too, and that's what the people want to hear. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, the grocery tax, it's not really that big of a deal from like your pocketbook perspective. Yes, like the grocery tax, is it that big? Is it a regressive tax? Yes, it's a regressive tax. Yes, all sales tax. But the big thing about the grocery tax is that there's other bigger things you could point to on the cost of living issue other than the grocery tax. There are other things you can point to other than the grocery tax, and yet there is a copy and paste thing that we're fighting the grocery tax. We're repealing the grocery tax. We're repealing the grocery tax. There are so many other things going on in the state related to cost of living that you can point to that are just as simple as the grocery tax, but they're copy and pasting just the grocery tax, and I don't really get it. So that's kind of my spiel about taxes this week.
Yeah, listen, some of those issues are issues I wanted to get to today, and we don't have time. Utility is a big one of those big drivers, and we just won't have time to get to that topic hopefully next week. There's a lot of these cost of living issues, and Democrats down in Springfield voted repeatedly to raise health insurance rates on working families. That's absolutely another great issue for us. These are all polling way higher than just taxes, and yet, we just can't quit the drug. All right, one of our last issues, because we're almost out of time, but again, I want to be productive here and helpful. And we saw, I don't want to name names because I really like her and she's a good friend of my wife's and mine, but one of the Republican candidates had an endorsement interview with the Daily Herald, and it just went really, really badly, unfortunately. And I want to use that as a reason to talk here about immigration, because Republicans are losing our way on the immigration issue. First of all, number one, immigration is dropping on the issues that voters care about. As we get closer to November, the issue is dropping more. So I don't know that this is going to be the issue for us to be running on, even though Trump keeps making it his number one issue. But Trump, during the debate, did not do us any favors, bringing up the migrants eating pets, the immigrants eating pets. And Republicans are sitting here defending this. And it's just throwing us off. We had a Republican congressional candidate in one of the districts who spent way too much time in her endorsement interview defending Trump and agreeing with Trump on this issue. And then it became a whole newspaper article because, of course, any chance to make Republicans look bad, there's going to be a newspaper article about it. And we're getting lost, just like we did when it came to crime, where we got lost on the Safety Act instead of focusing on crime. We're getting lost on immigration. The more you're sitting there defending Trump on whether migrants or immigrants are or are not eating pets, you're losing the larger issue. And especially in a state like Illinois, where we see that even Democrats agree that we shouldn't be spending $1 billion on benefits for non-citizens when we can't afford education and public health and all the things we should be spending this money on. There are way more important things to talk about, but yet we're sitting here talking about how, are migrants eating pets or are they not? We are losing this issue because we're getting dragged off on something that doesn't matter. So to Republicans, if you're going to talk immigration, which it's not a huge issue for us anymore, but if you're going to talk immigration, please stop getting dragged into these national sensational issues. It's not your job to defend Donald Trump. Let Donald Trump do that. You focus on what actually moves votes.
Well, look, the
Thank
thing about
you.
this,
Thank you, Colin. I had that on my bingo card. I got 3 sips out of that.
the thing about the thing about this immigration issue and Trump is that like you can use like the whole issue that's going on in Springfield, Ohio to your advantage when you're talking about the immigration issue. But instead, it seems like Trump and his campaign went for like the silly option of like they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, which isn't helpful. I mean, yeah, it was great for some internet memes, sure, but it's
You're gonna get poor Dan. We're gonna get poor Dan drunk by the end of this episode.
it's great for some internet memes, but it's not. It doesn't actually benefit you on like the issue of immigration. You could talk about how more immigration in the country is going to put an undue burden on our social services and gradually increase the cost of living for our Americans. It's going to take away jobs for working class Americans because the more immigrants come in, they lower the cost of work and all this stuff. Because that's what But some Republicans like these ideas, so I don't know why they would talk about them, of course. But the point is the immigration isn't necessarily a bad issue, but there are better ways to go about it.
Yes, I agree on that. All right, we are out of time. We had some great topics to get to. Actually, you know what? Let's do one more. This is a fun one. I'm sorry for you guys, and I'm going to take you an extra couple of minutes here, but we got to talk about this one because it's kind of fun. Kudos to the Illinois Republican Party for pushing this out. They're definitely getting a lot better at pushing out some of these emotional and fun issues that get people to pay attention. And there was a rating by Zippia, whoever the heck that is. But they had a rating around the country where they looked at 3 different metrics to determine which states are the most hated of all the states. They looked at which states residents said was the worst state to live in, their own residents. They looked at which states are losing population, and which states other states hate the most. And wouldn't you know it, the number 1 most hated state was Illinois. And why? It wasn't because other states hate us, because only one other state hates us. And it wasn't because of, it was a little bit because of the population decrease, but the main reason is the percentage of residents who say it's the worst state. They looked at a poll done by, I had it in here. I'll find it in a second. They did a poll done by a reputable outlet that asked people in their own state, is it the worst state, the worst place to live in? And Illinois residents, 25% of Illinois residents say it's the worst state to live in. The next closest was like 10 or 12%. We were double the next closest. A quarter of our residents say Illinois is the worst state in the country. Let that digest that for a second. A quarter of our own residents say that our state is the worst. That's not so great. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that doesn't portend well if you're the governor of this state or you're the leaders of this state, that a quarter say we are the worst state in the whole country.
We're number 1.
Yeah.
No, but
Finally we're number 1
ratio.
in yet another bad category.
Another bad. But look at the outline. I seem to remember another poll where they asked people if they wanted to leave Illinois, and it was like almost half the people here said if they could leave, they would. Yep. So this doesn't surprise me. People are, and I got excoriated 2 years ago after the last election. I was really disappointed on how, and I said to a reporter, I said, maybe things just aren't bad enough here yet. Well, maybe things are bad enough here yet, and we'll see a difference this November. I certainly hope so.
So TJ, you're thinking about saying something?
It's just tragic that the state of Illinois is thought of that way by our fellow residents. And a few years ago, I made a remark. I was counting all friends, co-workers, associates, different people that I knew that were kind of in my age cohort, like 15 years younger, 15 years older, a 30-year, span. But they were either executing on timelines to get out of here, or they had one in mind. And they said, once this happens, I'm out of here, but right now I got to stay. And it was like 2/3 of the people I knew or more that were between the age of 30 and 60. And that's not a good thing. I don't want to leave the state. I don't have plans to leave the state. But it's costly to live here. And it shouldn't be a bad place to live or work. I mean, we've got the Mississippi River, and we've got the Lake Michigan on the east. We've got a transportation network. We have all the ingredients you'd want for a great place to be. And it's just the opportunity that you have here, the ability to start a business, ability to keep a business here, the opportunities, they're just not here. Meanwhile, you go down to Nashville. If you go, I know somebody who's in Nashville every 6 weeks, and he says every time he's down there, he has to like reorient himself because there's something new there. They're building, and it can't. They're probably overbuilt now, but we're just not a place right now that's attractive for people to live in. Whether it's Chicago and the crime that is perceived to be there, and the actual numbers aren't good either.
Yeah.
We should be
Well,
ashamed.
and to your point, the poll we did for Empower back in July, 22% say it's affordable to live here, 57% say it's too expensive. And then Dan, to your point, 53% said that they're likely to move at some point out of the state of Illinois. Those are massive numbers. All right, I've taken up too much.
Talk to an accountant and ask them what their wealth management plans are. The people that have accumulated wealth in this state are looking at one of the biggest motivating factors is the death tax, the inheritance tax in Illinois, and it doesn't match up with the feds. And anybody that's accumulated wealth, and you don't have to be, super rich. You can be a business owner, a farm owner, landowner in this state, and you're looking at retirement or you're looking at the end of life planning. These people are making plans to leave, and that's the economic drain that the IRS has pointed out. We've lost billions and billions of dollars of disposable income, taxable income in this state over the last 5, 6, 7 years. And it's going to come a tipping point.
Yeah, you're right. All right, let's close this down. As always, we end with a fun segment, our OG and Clown of the Week. You're not required to nominate if you don't want to, but we like to have a little fun here. I do want to point out to Chris and Michael, you guys are neck and neck on who gets the closing word for bringing the heat. Michael came out strong. Chris has come on strong lately. Right now it's a tie. So I'm going to say here, your OG and Clown nominations are going to determine who wins this week. I'm just going to say it. But anybody have any they'd like to put out there, your OG and Clown of the Week nominations?
My clown of the week is going to be LaToya Greenwood for calling us and Capital Facts fake news, because that's just embarrassing. The truth doesn't lie, and she's got a terrible record.
My clown.
Go ahead.
I'll let the representative go first.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm tempted again, for the OG. My 50th wedding anniversary is next Wednesday, but I'm skipping that. I've already gotten all I need. I want to go to the Clown of the Week, and the Clown of the Week is the editorial board for the Chicago Tribune, talking about the energy crisis in Illinois. And all of a sudden they've discovered, we're going to have this big energy crisis in Illinois, and nobody in Springfield's paying attention. Who's paying attention? Okay. What a bunch of jerks, total jerks. Where were they 3 years ago? June 3 years ago, when the Freedom Caucus was on an energy tour, and we invited anybody to come to the coal mine, to the coal plants, to the gas plants, to the nuclear power plants. I've been on the energy committee for 6 years, and we've been fighting this. Had we had the editorial board from the Chicago Tribune and others on board, we could have beat back this terrible CEJA bill. We wouldn't be in this position. So, Clown of the Week, editorial board, Chicago Tribune.
It's a strong nomination, and your point's pretty valid. I mean, they sort of wrote that editorial as if they woke up and, hey guys, look, there's a problem here. And we're like, we've been screaming about this for years, guys.
Yeah.
My clown of the week is 25th Ward Alderman in the city of Chicago, Byron Sigcho Lopez, for taking 3 L's over the weekend. Not even weekend, over yesterday. He took 3 L's. First, he was not appointed as zoning committee chairman because he had so much baggage that Brandon Johnson literally cannot appoint him because nobody would approve him because everybody hates him. Then he couldn't get his TIF expansion through to the neighborhood of Pilsen because nobody wanted to do that. And finally, he betrayed the wonderful old ladies of St. Albert's Church, and they pushed back the landmark status designation for St. Albert's Church in Pilsen, which the Archdiocese wants to close and turn into housing for some reason. So Byron Sigcho Lopez, Clown of the Week, you failed on 3 fronts here, buddy. I don't know what the hell you're doing over there in Pilsen. You're a terrible alderman. Figure it out. Don't know what to tell you, bud. Somebody will take you out. Probably not Chewy because he failed this last time around for some reason. So somebody will take you out.
I'm shocked, Michael, you're not going to put the Teamsters in there. You were pretty honked off about that.
Nah, I just think the Latoya Greenwood thing is just hilarious.
You can have more than one, but that's fine. All right, fair. Anybody else have any? You guys have gotten some of mine, so we're getting down to the end of the list. I've got a couple more. Anyone else have any more you want to add?
Put the Northbrook Village Board in. A couple of weeks ago, they gave a $1.5 million loan to a coffee house to open up north of downtown Northbrook. This coffee house it's a small chain in the suburbs. It just kind of grew. They have coffee houses in 3 or 4 adjacent communities: Glencoe, Winnetka, Glenview, and they're opening one in Highland Park as well. Meanwhile, there's a local business owner who owns 3 local businesses and is trying to open up a coffee shop literally across the street from where this company's getting their build their coffee shop, and she couldn't get permits out of the village. So, and then this last week they met to give tax abatement to a company moving from Skokie into a building that just became vacant in June, and the tax abatement would result in significantly lower revenues from the building than if it just remained vacant, and the current property owner paid taxes on it. And it's only been vacant for 3 months. So I think both cases there's been objection from the community, and they've just rolled over and they voted unanimously. So I'll make them clown of the week.
Oh, all right. I got a couple quick ones because we're way over time here. For fun, got to give an OG of the week to the Bears defense while we give a clown of the week to the Bears offensive line. I wish I had more time to pontificate on that, but I'm late for my next appointment. Couple quick things for me. So Portia Capos got played a little bit here in Politico, Illinois. She released a list of the endorsements from the United Working Families. And clearly she just copy pasted from their press release where they called themselves an independent political organization. And no place in the universe is United Working Families an independent political organization. That's a coalition of the Chicago Teachers Union, SEIU, a whole bunch of far, far, far left political groups. And yet they got her to call them a independent political organization. I know she's got a lot to put in those daily emails she puts out, but come on, don't let them get away with that. They're not an independent political organization. Last thing is just the media for wanting to just being obsessed with being fact checkers. I'm old enough to remember when the media, their job was to report on things, not to actually fact check. And we saw this during the debate, which I don't want to get lost in that. But we've even seen it lately. A buddy of mine, and he'll probably be angry that I say this, but a buddy of mine, the Daily Herald, did it to that same congressional candidate that I talked about. Where in his article over and over, he listed, these are debunked claims. She incorrectly claimed, not reporting on the facts of what she said and letting readers make up their own minds. He was literally being the arbiter of what is and isn't the truth. And I just, this move from the media, as the media says, well, why is especially Republicans unhappy with the media? Well, you're not letting the public make up their own minds. You're saying for them that you guys are, we're telling you what the truth is, and you got to listen to us. I don't love this move. We've seen it gradually over the years, and it's just hitting an apex lately, including in some of our local papers, where they're now the fact checkers. They're telling us what to believe instead of just reporting the facts, reporting the details, and letting the readers make up their own minds. I don't love that. So I think that that whole movement needs to get a clown of the week. With that, closing thoughts. Let's go with TJ. Go ahead and give us your closing thoughts. We're way over time, so let's hopefully keep these brief.
Well, I mean, we need to be out there assuming that things are dire. We need to knock on doors. We need to continue working. And, another thing, we hear a lot of Republicans grouse about political consultants, and, present company accepted, of course, right? Oh, but without some of the consultants that do work for us and do get paid for it, but they're doing it because the rest of us have jobs and have families and also don't have the expertise. We really should recognize that there are some really good political consultants. Not to say that there are some not so ethical ones out there, but I think that times like this, when we really need to put the pedal down to the metal, we need to thank those who are out there helping our candidates.
Spending a lifetime becoming experts at what we do, there's probably some value to that. Representative Caulkins, your final thoughts.
Thank you for bringing me back. It's good to have an opportunity to speak and not be interrupted by our friend. I hope you're listening, Aaron. I love the guy. It's just too easy of a shot. Thanks again, you guys. Keep up the good work. Watch for you. And we'll see you up walking doors for Marty, and October 3rd, we'll see you in Mantino. There'll be a big get together there, just like they did up in Michigan last month.
All right, we'll be looking forward to that, and we'll report on it here. All right, I'll say it was a tie between Chris and Michael, but Michael hasn't gotten a win yet, so we'll let him go last. Chris, go ahead.
Remember when these things were an hour? By the end
Yeah,
of
I
this
know.
election, we're going to be
I
at
know.
like 2.5, 3 hours.
I'm
So
trying, man.
we are 47 days away from election day. Or I guess it'll be 46 by the time you watch this tomorrow. And it's going to get down and dirty. People aren't going to take very good care of themselves as we push for further and further to victory. But I'm here to tell you, please do take care of yourself. You may have noticed I haven't gotten my beard trimmed or a haircut of what's left of my hair after all these years of politicking. My barber, probably could use the $30 it takes to cut my hair and trim my beard. So I'm going to go get a haircut maybe tomorrow, maybe this weekend, because I need to take care of myself. And you should too, everybody. Politics is a hard business, and, not everybody takes care of themselves these last, a few weeks before election day. But take the time, trim your beard, cut your hair, brush your teeth, do the important things and take care of yourself, everybody.
Chris, $30 for a haircut. Does he charge you per hair? Speaking of, I had to give myself my own haircut. It's actually, if you look at it up close, it's awful. So thank God this is a small screen you see me on. All right, Michael, you get the final word this week. You brought some heat. What's up, man?
Hey, it's all right. I got an event that I got to go to, so I'm going to keep this short. I just want to say thank you to Rich Miller for watching every week, and hopefully we can continue to give him a little tidbits here and there of good information for him to inform his readers of what's really going on in this state.
Poking the bear. I like it. All right. With that, we'll close down briefly. Thank you to Lane Davis, our producer, for all the work he puts into this. Thank you to our watchers for sticking with us, even when we go way over time. And with that, we will catch you guys next week on the Smoke Filled Room. See y'all.